Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Michael Campbell here. I know Patrick was going to kick us off, but in true webinar format, we adjust and we adapt and we overcome. I'm Michael Campbell. I'm head of sales for Sound Intelligence, head of business development, essentially introducing customers to new technologies. Been in the security space about 25 years. And Rob, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, Rob Oldham, Stone Security, also kind of lead our sales efforts with our team at Stone. Been in the industry for about 25 years as well. And looking forward to, it's really amazing to team up with Michael at Sound Intelligence. I've worked very closely with Michael and Derek, the Sound Intelligence team for quite some time. So really a neat solution. And so it's exciting today to team up with Sound Intelligence and Stone Security together to present. And again, thanks everybody for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob. So let's go ahead and get us started. Of course, we've already done the intro, so our contact information is in the slides. We'll actually share this as well for anyone who's been registered. So don't feel like you got to scramble and scratch. We will make sure we share our contact information with everyone on the call today. So our topic. So jumping right in, what does AI mean for proactive and predictive security? When we look at kind of what's happening, we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about mega trends. Of course, AI is white hot. I think while most of you are on the call are very familiar with AI, we're going to talk about it certainly as a broad topic, and then more specifically about security applications and where does it fit? How does it work? What are some of the use cases that can help? And we'll certainly leave some time for Q&A just to ensure that we have an opportunity to hear from you if you've got questions. And I know several of you are already using AI, and we're excited to kind of hear your story as well as time permits. And so we'll go ahead and go forward. So I thought I'd start with a data point, right? Everybody likes to hear about data, but the reality is there's so much information out there. In fact, as you can see, we've created more data this last year, than we have in the last 5,000 years. And so I think what we're seeing is we certainly have, a multitude of data, but maybe not enough insight. And that's really the point that we want to talk a little bit about. So thanks, Trent Hunter, for that stat. And I'm going to bring in a couple other things from Trent Hunter, which I think are really good at identifying some of the things that are already happening. As you can see, gamification, divergence, multi-sensation, acceleration of growth. We've heard of technology transformation. I mean, there's so many different words out there, but the one that's certainly red hot, the one that we end up talking about the most, I think, is certainly our category, which is AI. The good news is that it's hitting #1 on the mega trends list, but it's also hitting #1 on the security list. And so when we talk a little bit about AI, it's important to kind of understand there's some very big differences when we talk about AI. AI started, automated intelligence or artificial intelligence, easy for me to say, started with very specific purpose, right? And when we look at the segmentation that had been occurring for many years, whether it's computer vision, getting more information from cameras, and being able to document it in detail what's happening. Machine learning, of course, is the overall category that we are in, and deep learning as well. Foundationally, processing speech, understanding text recognition. We all seem to have Siri and Alexa in our lives, so we understand the power of that. But neural networks, learning technologies that are really starting to leverage some of the different models altogether, and truly deep learning, which we're going to get into a little bit. So I would start also with kind of the kickoff. Microsoft jumped right in, right? So Microsoft has been backing ChatGPT and OpenAI for the last several years. But in November, they kicked off in a big way and releasing it and making it available to the public. And you're going to see the impact of that in a second. But the massive impact is that they're now already integrating that as of February into the search bar with Bing. And so that's a massive change and it has really kicked off just a huge race within the large technology companies to this category called generative large language multimodal model. Gollum, believe it or not, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, that's the terminology they're using. But what it is bringing all of that technology, all of those different categories that I mentioned earlier, whether it's machine vision, machine learning, AI, et cetera, all bringing it all together so that we have information in a much more meaningful way. That's what this all means. So I'm keeping it nice and simple. And what's happened? So we say it's red hot. It is really white hot. So ChatGPT has reached more users, 100 million users in 2 months, faster than any other technology that's out there. And so what's going on? So not to bore you with the kind of the stats about ChatGPT, but let's look at it. What does it mean for us in the security space? So Rob?
Yeah. So, kind of an interesting slide, not the typical slide you would see in our industry here. We have some Legos, and these are actually my son, he's 11. He built this, I think it was two weeks ago. It was a Sunday morning early. He brought this castle or fort or prison, whatever you want to call it, down to me and said, "Dad, check this out, check out this base." So I want to kind of, this is from a child's perspective, but he actually had some really cool concepts. And I guess maybe he's overheard me and seen kind of my years in the industry, how I approach security personally. I do have a military background. One of the founders of Stone was prior Secret Service. So we like to look at, in the defense industry or in the DoD or force protection, there's a term that I love. It's called the castle approach. And it's often referred to as defense in depth, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the castle approach, to kind of bring it down almost to the level of a child, to simplify it. So what you see here is you see kind of your concentric rings of security. So you have your outer, middle, and inner layers of security. And what my son did here is intriguing and very interesting. He's got a lot of really good lighting on his outer ring. If you look at the top left-hand photo, very good lighting all around that he's had the forethought to put. He's also, you can see surveillance cameras. I don't even know how he built those or if maybe that comes out of the box that way, but he's got some pretty large, obtrusive surveillance cameras. He told me that they move. So, in our industry, we call it a pan-tilt zoom or a PTZ. But then to take it even a step further, he's got his deterrence. He's got his detection devices, and now he's got his defense devices, which are the net shooter. He made sure to let me know. So that's the middle photo. I wrote it in there so you can see that's a net shooter. So that's a defense mechanism. And then he's got his paralyzer down in the right-hand corner. So that is kind of where we're going to go with what AI is doing today. Obviously, we don't have a net shooter or a paralyzer today. But eventually, maybe we'll get there, but we do have some interesting technologies, and that's where we're going to kind of dive into.
Perfect. Okay.
I did see a hand raise. I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, let's go ahead and grab it if there's some questions here. Oh, it looks like Patrick sent it out.
Okay.
Okay. All good. All right. So what you're going to see is actually called object recognition. So it is machine vision, and it's essentially identifying in real time all of the objects that it's seeing and seeing. So we'll go ahead and play it. Okay, so of course you're even seeing it's identifying very specific things on the vehicle itself. But the interesting part is, of course, measuring what's about to happen next. Grabbing that vehicle tag, right? So also known as plate recognition or LPR, license plate recognition. Identifying individuals. And these nice young lads are dropping off some new materials for this nice homeowner. Of course, being picked up. So clearly there must have been an issue here that why this gentleman has a recognition of objects. But it just is such a great example. You can see now they're about to hot tail it out of there. But you can see, while this isn't in the US, of course, that's a European tag. But you can get the idea of what is possible now with object recognition, even very complex scenes that we're seeing here. And Rob and I are going to take you through a couple other examples so you can see some of the distinction that we can gather here. So Rob, I'll go ahead and play the first one if you want to talk.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk through why we play. So he's going to play the left-hand video. This is one of our clients. These folks are out of Salt Lake City. They had a lot of problems with on the weekends. They're closed on Sundays. So they have a lot of, usually it's skateboarders, and they like to come in and they like to ride down the rails, and you can see the ramps and stuff. So, but that does cause a substantial amount of damage, and it attracts further crime like graffiti and whatnot. So you can see when they came into the scene, we were able to detect them accurately, and then we had an audible message play and they took off. So again, back to the castle approach, we don't have moats and parapets and things like that to make it harder for attackers to breach, but we do have technology today. So especially in a retail environment where it's open campus. And then on the right-hand side, we'll play another one. So this is using thermal cameras because it's a larger detection range. And this is after hours, you have two folks coming on property. We don't want anybody on property. We detect them accurately. You can see the bounding box. And then we play a audible message over a speaker horn at 130 decibels. And you can see what what the effect is. We want to deter, and that's the audio piece really plays a big role in that for sure, as you can see here in this real world example. And we're not getting too complex here. I mean, the goal is we want it to be reliable. We need to have 100% reliability, because once you start getting in the 90s, you start to have false positives, and the false positives, they'll bring havoc to your system to where you just want to turn it off. And that's where AI, specifically deep learning right now, generally at the edge, that's how we're leveraging it. We're able to very accurately detect people when they come onto your property. I'm going to play another one. So this one, we're actually going to add a few more layers here. So you'll kind of see when the vehicle pulls in, we have three different layers of defense, if you will. So the deterrent factor. So first of all, the detection, the camera's accurately, reliably detecting the truck as it pulls in. And you can see the blue strobe, and you can hear our audio play.
All trespassers will be prosecuted. Full extent of the law. Leave the area immediately.
So most of the time, folks are going to leave, they're going to go somewhere else. But let's say they ignored that first level of deterrent and they get out of the vehicle. I'll show you. Get out of the vehicle. And once the deep learning detects humans, the strobe now turns amber and red. You can see that color change. And we can play a different message. We can even raise the volume. And now once you loiter, so you still ignore and you stay longer, you'll see the third level of deterrence, or in our case, theoretically, it's defense. We don't have a net shooter, the taser, but we are going to make it really annoying for folks to want to stay around. You'll see that here in just a moment.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So annoying.
Just to do the cherry on top, you'll see we have these strobes down the whole entire side of the building with speakers as well.
Yeah, all fired.
You can go ahead.
Okay, great. Oh, all good, Rob?
Yeah, so just to recap there, because I know I was talking over the video, so hopefully everybody got understood what we're doing here. But back to the castle approach, or if you want to dive a little deeper, DID is the acronym I like to use, defense in depth. And I'll dive a little deeper as we go here and what the three layers are of that. And Michael and I are going to kind of articulate more, but the bringing it all together, what we showed here, and this is real world, this is stuff we're deploying today all over the world, and it works extremely well. Reliable detection using deep learning. We're doing that, leveraging that at the edge in the camera. And we've seen the accuracy, if it's designed properly, at 100% reliable detection. And then secondly, we notify, so we're letting them know we're touching the senses. There's plenty of studies that are out there. The Journal of Interpersonal Violence says that they did a study that criminals are less likely to commit an act of crime if there's risk of being seen. What we're doing is we're letting them know that we do see them. All too often, criminals don't realize, even though there's a camera right above them, there's an assumption that it doesn't work, nobody's watching it, which is usually actually the case. That's predominantly been the issue in our industry. And it's all reactive, it's after the fact. And folks these days are wearing hoodies, hats, face masks a lot more than ever. So even with good video, it's really hard to respond to that, and it's all reactive. We're letting them know very obtrusively that we know they are there and they are being seen. And like I said, there's plenty of studies out there that talk about, if there's a potential witness, a criminal is much less likely to want to commit the crime, because now there's the odds of being prosecuted and punished are much greater. So that's kind of the goal here.
That's a great point, Rob. And obviously we didn't put deterrence on here, but that is another D, right? Deter, detect, and deter and document. And I think that's a really great point that you bring forward. So that's great. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about, we won't have this be a sound intelligence sales commercial, certainly, but I will tell you a little bit about some of the categories that we've been making detections on. We're a 23-year startup, I always like to say, but we've been doing AI, truly machine learning, and really getting into the detection of very specific use cases and concerns around aggression, agitation. People are shouting, yelling, screaming, getting highly agitated, but that's also a precursor to violence. 90% of a physical assault is going to start with a verbal altercation. And so the ability to make those detections, to be aware that that's happening, can really improve the posture of any of our end users and the way that they're ready to handle a situation and hopefully de-escalate it is the number one strategy. When we look at gunshots, of course, unfortunately, we have to talk about that these days. But the ability to make that quick gunshot detection on the camera systems, on the technology that our customers have already invested in, by adding software that makes that detection. And that's really what we are. So making that quick learning, that quick deep learning technology and bringing it to the attention, bringing that awareness to the attention of security teams and management and operations folks, but also law enforcement, really, really powerful tools. Also breaking glass, so augmenting some of the intrusion alarm technologies that are available out there, certainly, and then car alarms for parking garages, et cetera. And we're working on a couple other technologies to make detections for high-speed cutting tools, because catalytic converter theft is such a large problem right now. And so we're studying that right now. On the healthcare side, and not to bore you with a bunch of healthcare information, but if it's important enough for us to make detections, to be aware of sounds that are happening in a patient room, these are categories that we've already done. So that same kind of use case of stressed voice and aggressive behavior and yelling and shouting, highly agitated individuals, but it also could be a parking garage or another area where someone's fallen down and they're hurt and they need assistance and can't hit that area of refuge. And so that's really good. Also another use case to be thinking about. Coughing fits, coughing alerts, around, not just one or two coughs, but a real fit, and medical devices. So use cases, which I'm going to show you a couple examples, and then acoustic monitoring we'll also talk about. So I won't bore you with the details. It looks like I'm misaligned right there, but we're doing it in a lot of different real world use cases all over. And so we don't have the time to talk through a lot of them, but we'll bring in a few of them just so you can see where audio detection can really help. And what does it look like at Not to get into the geek speak, but on the right-hand side is what our analytic looks like. It is measuring the frequency, the energy, the pitch, the tone, and the tempo changes of sound itself. It's not recording. It's not listening to you. It's not doing any of those things to invade privacy. What it is doing is identifying very specific sounds. Breaking glass has a sound signature. Yelling, shouting, screaming, escalating human voice has disharmonics, and those are the things that our analytics has been trained on. And those are just really good examples of how we can make that detection on a camera at the edge, right where, in a lobby, in a parking structure, at the area of refuge, up and down the parking lanes, and many other use cases, of course, outside courtyards, etc. And so it gives you the idea on how we can add that very effectively and to make those detections very accurately and efficiently. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Is we're giving your cameras, which are your eyes, we're giving them ears. That's, effectively we're giving them the ability to listen and hear. And there's also plenty of areas on any given campus, or let's use the term castle. There's plenty of areas where you cannot use video. So a restroom could be a great example of that, where there's privacy needs. So being able to passively listen and passively listening for specific events, right? Like yelling, screaming, and then even putting it on a schedule. We had a client the other day that they were locking down their facility. They had somebody hiding out in the restroom. Thankfully, an employee heard that person. But you can imagine, had somebody not physically heard, there might have been a much greater loss or a bigger impact. So having the ability to listen is a big augmentation to your overall security system.
Yeah, and it's a great point, Rob, because I think what most of us don't realize is that, as Rob mentioned, I think early on, most of the video systems that are out there are really just documenting events. They're capturing incidents. Sometimes, depending on how close our image is, it may not be prosecutable. It may not be enough information. As Rob said, a lot of people are wearing hoodies these days. It may not give us enough information to do anything that really is meaningful, versus making immediate detection, which oftentimes we don't think of camera systems as detection devices. We think of, alarm and intrusion devices like fire alarms and intrusion alarms. Those are our mainstay detections. But the augmentation of this technology into a video software, adding, as Rob said, your audio detections adds a lot of a lot of value to the equation. So here's an example as it sits for Rock Hill Schools. They were having some incidents of fighting. That they thought they had about 40 to 50 fights a year. It was actually, by the time they got the technology in and we worked with them, they realized they actually had closer to 100 incidents. They had about a 2 to 3 minute response time between the office hearing about an issue and then them getting a school resource officer involved or administration or both. And so it took them about 2 to 3 minutes. We were able to save them 75% reduction in time, and we took that down to 20 to 30 seconds. So you can imagine in a fight that is a lifetime. 2 to 3 minutes, everything's usually over. And so 20 to 30 seconds, we have a chance to intervene. And so we're not going to, just in the interest of time, we're not going to go through a lot of the videos on each of these, but we wanted you to see the use cases and how it can add to the equation from an alert standpoint. I also want to show you Blue Cross Blue Shield on the East Coast. This is a customer who, of course, does health insurance. And unfortunately, sometimes people get denied claims and they do show up at the corporate offices and try to engage employees. And sometimes things are not exactly safe. And so they worked with us, access camera technology deployed, aggression detection and gunshots for this customer. But I'll show you what it looks like in your security operations center, how it makes alerts, and the audible notifications that we also use.
Okay, shot number 2, location 6.
Possible gunshot detected at Red Run 715A.
Okay, so I'm going to pause real fast so you can just get a sense on what you're looking at here. Back here is really just us. That's our detection. That's not really what our customer sees. What our customer sees is this. They see their video screen. it pops up an alert in their security operations center showing them the cameras that made a detection, showing them the overlay of why there was a detection and what type of detection it was. In this case, it was a gunshot that we actually did in testing the system. We also, of course, showed adjacent cameras. So in this case, it happens to be a 360-degree camera. So we're showing all different views of that area, but it's very advantageous to be able to see. It pulls up the, when they have over 40 different locations just in this region, very helpful to be able to see what building it's gone off and to hear it also, what building and why there's been a detection, as well as some instructions on what we want that security officer to do with this information. So let me show you the next screen, which is actually a location map.
Fire. Okay, fire in the hole.
As that comes up,
Possible gunshot detected at Red Run 715A.
okay, so of course, it's a test, but showing us where the location is, a red ring around that location, so it flashes so the security officer can see what's happening, where it's happening, what type of detection was made, what the challenge is, et cetera, and then the ability to even communicate in a mass way to all of those employees in that building using speakers, essentially, that are already integrated into Milestone in this case. So very, very powerful example of how Milestone access and sound intelligence kind of all work together. Again, not meant to be a commercial, but just to show you how some use cases can work for us. Now I'll advance. Okay. Next, we'll show you NetApp's headquarters on the West Coast. And this is a gunshot test, but you'll see how that detection gets made very quickly. Again, very similar to what we
Shot
showed.
number 20.
Okay. Of course, that's a blank weapon, which is why it's orange, but it gives you an idea on how the detection gets made, reported into Milestone, shows us the alert of where it's occurring. And then, of course, we can add a lot of different notifications, as Rob was indicating. Now we can do a lot of different things: lock down the facility, validate, verify where it's happening, and then follow our set of already defined instructions on what we want our security team to do in this case. So,
One
Robin,
little fun note on that one is that's Aaron on our team at Stone, and he fired the weapon, kind of towards the wall, kind of towards an opening area. So rule of thumb, don't fire, even if you're shooting blanks, don't fire it towards the carpet. Because you'll blow a hole in the carpet. So just a fun little tidbit of information to know there.
very good. So hopefully no carpet damage on that one.
But we've seen it before.
Very good. So this is a citywide surveillance installation where a gunshot was installed with microphones on existing cameras in the city. And unfortunately, this led to us detecting, fortunately or unfortunately, shots fired in this particular location with a drive-by shooting. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and skip past it. But the results for the customer is that they were able to clear this case very quickly. They immediately made the detection, alerted into their 911 center, notified the officers in the area, and believe they also have license plate recognition. So kind of the best of both worlds of not only recognizing the incident, but also being able to identify who was involved and what vehicles. So very, very powerful. And I'll skip past that just in the interest of time. And on the other side, and just to kind of get our wheels turning a little bit about how we can use different types of audio detection. And so we mentioned a little bit about call for help, that nurse, that stressed voice is also something we do more in a patient application. In this particular case, coughing fit, but also medical devices. And so one of our customers is actually on the call. And so I figured we'd definitely show an example of his hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah, utilizing our technology for patient bed exit alarm to mitigate and detect when a at-risk for a fall patient, especially one of our veterans, is trying to leave the bed unassisted. This is what reports up to the nurse station so we all can see it, so they can see it, excuse me. So again, it paints a dark monitor. It illustrates what's happening for the nurses, so they don't have to pay attention to all these bells and clicks and other things. Everybody's concerned about getting overwhelmed with more alerts, alarm fatigue, if you will. And so the ability to identify just the patients that are at risk for falls, hear that alert through a workstation and play that alert so that they all know what tone that is. And that, of course, is in that spectrogram. So those are just good examples of how it can be utilized to add additional benefit. And last but certainly not least, one thing that Sound Intelligence has been working on for quite a while, and just really out of this is more of a healthcare setting, but it's a really good opportunity to understand the power of audio analytics and what we can do with it. And so this is us demonstrating the ability to monitor room noise, especially for high levels of alerts. So either instantaneous or continuous noise levels in a hospital leads to a lot of negative effects for patients and their ability to recover. Sleep is crucial for patients. And so loud noises affect not only their care, but also their satisfaction, of course. And so that affects their Gini scores, which is what they're responding to when they leave the hospital. And so not only that, but also we're working on the ability to spot keywords in those applications, and also working with video and audio together to identify patient positioning. So indicators for someone sliding down the side rail to a bed in the room, starting to put their hands over the bed rail. So even if they haven't turned on the bed exit alarm, our ability to mitigate those types of things are some of the things we're working on with other technology partners. So now that's the power of not just audio, but video integration. So very, very powerful technologies. So while Rob and I are kind of wrapping up, what we wanted to share with you was just a couple other use cases of where, to be thinking about as you're thinking about your own locations, your own properties, and where maybe some of the risks could be occurring for you, where maybe that early warning, that awareness, that detection can really help and mitigate some of these things. So all of these categories that are here certainly aren't covered by audio analytics, some of them video analytics, but some of them with the partnership together. As Rob showed you, some really good use cases, especially for vandalism and loitering and criminal trespass. But illegal dumping was obviously that use case you all saw. When we look at workplace violence, workplace assaults, God forbid an active shooter ever on one of our customers' properties, but the ability to know what's happening as quickly as possible can save lives, and then it's really just helpful. And it brings awareness to technologies that are traditionally just documenting, and so. Suffice it to say that business operational challenges are plentiful these days, especially with the lack of resources. So the ability to identify where maybe some things aren't going the way we'd like them to go, maybe our policies and procedures aren't being followed, et cetera. And so it just gives us a really nice opportunity to identify operational benefits as well. And so a lot of really strong use cases that we all talked about. So Rob, anything to add here before we jump?
Yeah. Pretty good on time, so we have a few minutes. So I want to just kind of, hopefully we set the table good enough so that everybody kind of gets a good understanding of where AI is today in our industry. And we do tend to focus a lot on security because that's kind of the forefront of our business. Our company name is Stone Security, and we've entertained the idea that maybe we need to take that security piece out of it because we do so much more than security. That being said, it all kind of falls back into that, again, back to the defense in depth, which the definition of that is it's a security strategy in which you use multiple security tools, right? And so audio detection is a piece of that. You use them multiple mechanisms and policies. And we haven't talked a lot about policy, so I'm going to touch on that a little bit, but again, the definition of defense in depth is all of that is deployed in tandem. And so that's really the big importance, is that it's all together. It's not one or the other, it's in tandem. So a few examples of projects that we've deployed recently using AI or leveraging AI. We've done obviously a lot of construction sites to mitigate theft. So that's a big part of it. We've done a lot of university campuses. The gunshot detection is a huge piece of that, to be more proactive, as well as, like your parking areas, the police department, public safety building where, somebody has to pay a parking fine. So aggression detection is very popular in that environment. Substations and water dams, we've been very active in that vertical lately with leveraging AI for reliable detection of humans, and then to deter, because these are usually remote sites. So if you wanted to deploy an officer or a responding guard, it would take a long time to get there. Generators, so power generators to monitor the heat, that's a big one. If the generator gets too hot, we can remotely get notification. Restrooms, I already talked a little bit about that. We've done vagrancy for ATM vestibules. Vagrancy is an interesting one because the vagrants tend to stay there for quite some time. So theoretically, they get lost in the scene if they don't move for periods of hours. And we do have some AI that works really well at maintaining the visual that they're still there. People counting is a big one. It's getting a lot better. We can do it by direction. Vehicle counting is another one. We can do time and area. That's been a big one for one of our C-store clients, for fuel theft. If the vehicle's in a specific area for too long, we can get real-time notification and deploy deterrents like strobes and audio and notification. And then we talked about the medical piece of it as well. So those are kind of a few. And then I guess just to wrap it up, in the theory of defense in depth, there's really three facets of that, or three tenets. The first one is administrative. And I mentioned that before. We would be remiss if we ended this webinar, this conversation, without talking about the administrative piece. It is the big picture. It's the policies. So you can leverage the technology all you want, but if you don't have the administrative side engaged and you don't have policies implemented, how are you going to respond to this? Then it potentially is all for naught. The second one of the tenets is physical controls, and we've talked an awful lot about that. That's it's often overlooked, but that's your cameras, that's your locks, that's your access control, that's your burglar alarm systems, that's your physical controls. Crime prevention through environmental design, choke points, only a few ways in and out of your facility. Those are things that are very important. And then the third one is your technical, which is hardware and software. And so it all comes back to one interface, which in our case, it's generally going to be Milestone, of course, and that's your interface to pull everything together. It has your powerful rules engine so that you can now be very responsive, and you have that data at your fingertips, and you can leverage all of these peripheral devices in one single pane of glass. So that's kind of, I wanted to wrap it up with all that. One last note too that dawned on me while Michael was talking. Public view monitors. We often don't talk. AI is so good now at detection of people and vehicles. It's really, really good at that today. And so a public view monitor, something that's pretty, viewed as quite a simple thing. That's a really, really good deterrent device to let people know that they are seen. We're watching them, they're being recorded. And I go back to the Journal of Experimental Criminology. They did a study on that. Again, criminals don't like to be seen. If they know they're being watched, they're much less likely to commit an act of crime or violence. And so I'll just go ahead and pause there.
Wow, that's very good. Yeah, thanks, Rob. I appreciate you adding some flavor to that from your perspective, especially in the field. So we'll leave this up. I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to open up for some questions. We wanted to kind of leave up the beneficial impact area. We've been talking about these all along, but we know that awareness draws attention and adds an element to our security technologies that maybe we're not utilizing and haven't been utilizing in the past to intervene, avoid, lessen the impact and severity. We know that they also can augment what we're doing on traditional alarm side. And we've got several retail customers that are doing that very thing, adding audio analytics, video analytics to their security technology to not only mitigate false alarms, but also to be that first line of detection, actually, in many cases, and give us that immediate awareness, as you saw with that Care First example, immediate incident awareness, severity, incident type. We knew all of that immediately, and so very, very fast detection. It allows us to efficiently use our security and patrol officers if you're able to do that. But even if you're not, we know that Stone has the ability to do that for you. And so those remote detections that you saw, that remote patrol officers, let Stone be an extension to you and your team to be aware of those situations and get engaged. And, reporting, nothing, as Rob mentioned, the importance of the administrative side, the policies and procedures to be followed, but reporting is a huge one. And this is just a real large value for not only us to analyze what happened and what is occurring, but also to learn and maybe root causes for us to harden our environment and improve our security posture. And then finally, just solving for workplace violence and any of those real-time risks. So with that, let's go ahead and open it up for any questions. Let me see who's in the chat. Looks like just a couple.
We have some fun comments in the chat.
A couple of good comments. Yep. Yeah. Any questions though?
Easy crowd.
Right. Oh, looks like we got one. All right. That's from Patrick.
We'll take comments too, though.
Yeah. Right. I like those. All right. I think, Rob, anything else to add before we wrap up? Doesn't look like we have any questions.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everybody's time. I saw something pop up, but yeah, not a question. So yeah, again, we didn't want this to be a salesy, but we want to talk about how to leverage AI, and hopefully we did at least an okay job at that. You've got our contact information that was at the beginning of the presentation.
Yep. So
feel free to reach out for any additional questions or maybe sideline conversations. If you want the photos of the Lego castle, for sure, I'm send more photos, and I'm sure there will be a 2.0 or a 2.0 that will come out. So it looks like there is one question though before we end. I think we have a little bit of time that just popped up, Michael.
Oh, okay, great. Yep. And the question is from Clint Glauser. It says, how well does the aggression detection work in a packed lobby or waiting room? And it just depends on the Clint, to answer your question. It depends on the background noise level. And so as long as it's not above, I would say 70, 75 decibels consistently, we absolutely work in that environment. In fact, in waiting rooms, we've put in emergency departments and trauma centers. And so if you can imagine, that is probably is one of the loudest environments you can get. And we effectively detect in that. So the only limitation for us is really that it will decrease the distance that we can cover. So we just may need one more detector in a lobby like that that's very busy. So hopefully that answered your question.
And to maybe add to that a little bit, AI is unique. I mean, every application is going to be different. There's no two the same, generally speaking. So, my rule of thumb is always we engage with Sound Intelligence. We like to understand your environment, exactly what it is and what it isn't. And then we work together to do, a proof of value, to verify that it will work properly in your environment. And then along the way, the policies, the administrative side needs to be developed. What are you going to do when you have aggression detected? How do you respond? Do you call in the cavalry? Probably not. So those are things that have to be figured out together, symbiotically. And the AI learns too, so it learns the environment, so it can adapt. But it's not a silver bullet by any means. So there's several things to keep into mind. One of them too, though, is it's tied to your video. So typically it's tied to your video. So when you get an alarm, you can visually verify, and that allows you to be much more proactive and respond accordingly, or you're much better prepared to respond because you have eyes on the scene, you know who you're looking for, things like that. So
yeah, it really is a great point, Rob, because the ability to integrate that and quickly ascertain, what am I looking at here? Should I send a guard or a patrol officer over to the area just to check it out? Or is this a severe incident that I need to get my, incident response team immediately on? And so it just improves that posture. And what we've seen, especially in healthcare, is that, over 50% of the incidents are not reported or not reported on time. And so it solves that equation, especially in those high risk areas. So it's a great question, Clint. Thanks for it.
One last thing to add to that too. Maybe it's just somebody that talks, that we all know somebody like that talks really loud. They sound aggressive, but they're not. So it's still not a bad thing to maybe send in an administrator or a security guard. And we've seen this, it's very effective, where they're more engaged, right? They may be at the other end of the building, they get an alert, maybe it is just a loud talker, but they show up quick, right? And they're there, they're being engaged with the staff and with the client's customer base. And that's a positive thing for sure.
It is, you're absolutely right. All right, well, thanks everyone for your time. I hope this was beneficial and informative. Please reach out to us if you have additional questions. We're happy to help, and that's what we're here for. So thanks very much for your time. Appreciate you attending today.
Thanks, everybody.